Who is Jezebel? Give me a detailed response of her history, legacy, and her theological impact. Jezebel, also known as Jezebel of Sidon, is a significant figure in the Hebrew Bible, known for her role as a queen and her influence on the religious practices of ancient Israel. Her story is primarily found in the books of Kings, specifically 1 Kings 16:31-22:40 and 2 Kings 9:7-10:17. Here's a detailed overview of her history, legacy, and theological impact. Her history, background and marriage. Jezebel was the daughter of Ethbal, the king of the Sidonians, a Phoenician city-state. She married Ahab, the king of Israel, around 870 BCE. This marriage was politically motivated, aiming to strengthen alliances between Israel and Phoenicia. Her religious influence. Jezebel is notorious for promoting the worship of Baal, the chief deity of the Canaanite pantheon, and Asherah, a fertility goddess. She built temples and altars to these deities in Israel, which led to a significant shift in religious practices away from Yahwism, the religion of the Israelites. Jezebel also supported and protected the prophets of Baal, often at the expense of the prophets of Yahweh. Her conflict with Elijah. Jezebel's religious reforms brought her into direct conflict with the prophet Elijah. Elijah challenged the prophets of Baal to a contest on Mount Carmel, where he demonstrated the superiority of Yahweh by calling down fire from heaven to consume a sacrifice. This event led to the slaughter of the Baal prophets and further enraged Jezebel, who swore to kill Elijah. Her political and religious reforms. Jezebel's influence extended beyond religion into politics. She used her position to manipulate Ahab and the court, often to the detriment of Yahwistic practices. Her actions included the seizure of vineyards and orchards for the construction of Baal temples and the persecution of Yahweh's prophets. Her legacy is a symbol of religious syncretism, the blending of different religious beliefs and practices. Jezebel's legacy is deeply tied to her role in promoting religious syncretism. Her efforts to integrate Baal worship into Israelite religion made her a symbol of religious compromise and idolatry. Her show of feminine power and influence. Jezebel is also remembered for her political acumen and the power she wielded as a queen. Her ability to influence her husband and the court highlights the significant role women could play in ancient politics, even if it was often behind the scenes. Her cultural impact. The name Jezebel has become synonymous with a promiscuous or immoral woman, often used pejoratively in literature and popular culture. This association stems from her portrayal in the Bible and the subsequent interpretations of her actions. The theological impact. Idolatry and apostasy. Theologically, Jezebel represents the dangers of idolatry and apostasy. Her promotion of Baal worship is seen as a direct challenge to the exclusive worship of Yahweh, leading many Israelites astray. This period is often cited as a time of great spiritual unfaithfulness for the Israelites. The prophetic opposition. Jezebel's opposition to the prophets of Yahweh, particularly Elijah, underscores the ongoing struggle between true prophecy and false religious practices. Elijah's victory over the prophets of Baal is a powerful narrative of Yahweh's supremacy and the eventual downfall of those who oppose his prophets. A divine judgment. Jezebel's eventual fate being thrown from a window and trampled by horses, with her blood splattering the walls, 2 Kings 9:30-37, is a stark reminder of divine judgment. Her death is a fulfillment of Elijah's prophecy and serves as a warning against those who lead others into idolatry and sin. Her gender and power. From a feminist theological perspective, Jezebel's story can be seen as a complex narrative of female power and agency. While she is often vilified, her actions also highlight the capabilities and influence of women in ancient societies, even within patriarchal structures. In summary, Jezebel of the Bible is a multifaceted figure whose actions had profound religious, political, and cultural impacts. Her legacy continues to influence interpretations of idolatry, female power, and the consequences of religious compromise. Create a list of 10 key questions about her, and answer those questions. Here are 10 key questions about Jezebel, along with their answers. Who were Jezebel's parents? Jezebel's father was Ethbal, the king of the Sidonians. Her mother is not named in the Bible. Why did Jezebel marry Ahab? Jezebel married Ahab, the king of Israel, as part of a political alliance between Israel and Phoenicia. This marriage was arranged to strengthen the political and economic ties between the two regions. What religious beliefs did Jezebel promote? Jezebel was a devoted worshipper of Baal, the chief deity of the Canaanite pantheon, and Asherah, a fertility goddess. Baal and Asherah are significant figures in ancient Canaanite mythology and religion. Here's a brief overview of each. Baal. Role: Baal was the chief deity of the Canaanite pantheon, often associated with storms, rain, and fertility. He was seen as a warrior god who battled against the forces of chaos and drought. Symbolism: Baal's name translates to Lord or Master, reflecting his dominance and power. He was often depicted with attributes of a bull, symbolizing strength and virility. Mythology: in Canaanite mythology, Baal is involved in epic battles, most notably with Yam, the god of the sea, and Mot, the god of death and drought. These myths often revolve around themes of life, death, and rebirth, reflecting the agricultural cycles of the region. Asherah. Role: Asherah was a fertility goddess, often associated with trees, groves, and sacred poles, Asherim. She was a consort of Baal and was revered as a mother goddess, embodying fertility, wisdom, and protection. Symbolism: Asherah was often depicted as a tree or a pole, which were common symbols of fertility and life. Her name is derived from the word for straight or upright, reflecting her association with trees and pillars. Mythology: Asherah was sometimes referred to as the Queen of Heaven and was worshipped alongside Baal. Her cult involved rituals and practices aimed at ensuring fertility and prosperity, both in agriculture and human reproduction. Both Baal and Asherah played crucial roles in the religious and cultural life of the ancient Canaanites, influencing various aspects of their society, including agriculture, warfare, and family life. She promoted the worship of these deities in Israel, building temples and altars for them. Who was Jezebel's main religious opponent? Jezebel's main religious opponent was the prophet Elijah. Elijah challenged her promotion of Baal worship and advocated for the exclusive worship of Yahweh, the God of Israel. What was the contest on Mount Carmel? The contest on Mount Carmel was a challenge issued by Elijah to the prophets of Baal. Each side prepared a sacrifice, and the God who answered by sending fire from heaven would be recognized as the true deity. Yahweh answered Elijah's prayer, consuming his sacrifice with fire, while Baal did not respond. How did Jezebel respond to Elijah's actions? Enraged by Elijah's victory and the subsequent slaughter of the Baal prophets, Jezebel swore to kill Elijah. This led Elijah to flee for his life, eventually seeking refuge in a cave on Mount Horeb. What happened to Jezebel's body after her death? After Jezebel's death, her body was thrown out of a window and trampled by horses, fulfilling Elijah's prophecy. Her blood splattered the walls, and her body was left to be eaten by dogs, leaving only her skull, feet, and palms, according to 2 Kings 9:30-37. What is Jezebel's significance in the Bible? Jezebel is significant as a symbol of religious syncretism and the dangers of idolatry. Her actions represent the spiritual unfaithfulness of Israel during that period and the opposition between true prophecy and false religious practices. How has Jezebel been portrayed in popular culture? In popular culture, Jezebel is often portrayed as a promiscuous or immoral woman, reflecting her biblical portrayal as a queen who led others into idolatry and sin. Her name has become synonymous with such characteristics. What can we learn from Jezebel's story theologically? Theologically, Jezebel's story teaches about the consequences of idolatry and apostasy, the importance of remaining faithful to Yahweh, and the power of true prophecy. It also explores themes of divine judgment and the complexities of female power and agency in a patriarchal society. Here is a poem about Queen Jezebel. In lands where Phoenician sunbeams play, there ruled a queen, Jezebel, her name. With eyes that held a fiery day, and spirit wild and proud and untamed. From Sidon's shores she came, a princess bold, to marry Ahab, Israel's king. Her heart afire with stories told. Of Baal and Asherah, gods she'd bring. She built them temples, high and grand, where incense rose like prayers unseen. And Israel's heart did turn and bend, to worship gods of Canaan's green. Yet Elijah stood, a prophet bold, his voice like thunder, clear and strong. "Return," he cried, "to Yahweh's fold, or face his wrath, and Baal's wrong." On Carmel's height, a contest waged between the prophets, fire and rage. Elijah's God, with flame engaged, consumed the sacrifice, wood and flood. Jezebel raged, her fury high. "By Baal, I'll have Elijah slain." But Yahweh's will could not deny. And Elijah fled, in fear and pain. Her end was grim, as prophets foretold. Thrown from a height, her blood did spill. By horses trampled, story told of Jezebel, whose power did fill a queen of might, of passion's flame. Her legacy, a tale of evil and sin, of idolatry's shameful game, and Yahweh's wrath, where mercy's thin. Amen. What can we learn from the story of Jezebel? Theologically, the narrative of Jezebel offers a rich tapestry of theological themes that can be dissected through a multitude of academic lenses. From a theological perspective, several profound lessons emerge from her story, which can be articulated using sophisticated terminology and concepts. Idolatry and apostasy. Jezebel's promotion of Baal and Asherah worship exemplifies the theological concept of idolatry, where the devotion owed exclusively to Yahweh is diverted to other deities. This apostasy represents a profound spiritual unfaithfulness, a breach of the covenant between Yahweh and Israel. The theological implications of this idolatry underscore the danger of syncretism, where foreign religious practices are integrated into the worship of Yahweh, diluting its purity and integrity. Prophetic opposition. The conflict between Jezebel and the prophet Elijah illustrates the ongoing struggle between true prophecy and false religious practices. Elijah, as a type of vaticinium ecstasis, prophetic ecstasy, embodies the authentic voice of Yahweh, challenging the heterodox practices promoted by Jezebel. This dynamic highlights the role of prophets as guardians of theological orthodoxy and as agents of divine judgment against apostasy. Divine judgment. Jezebel's eventual demise, as foretold by Elijah, is a stark manifestation of divine retribution. Her death, described in graphic detail, serves as a memento mori and a theodicy. Noun, theodicy, plural noun, theodicies, the vindication of divine goodness and providence in view of the existence of evil. Stifying Yahweh's actions against those who lead his people astray. This narrative element underscores the theological principle of lex talionis, where the punishment meted out is commensurate with the sin committed. Gender and power. From a feminist theological perspective, Jezebel's story can be analyzed through the lens of Ecclesia Feminina, exploring the complexities of female power and agency within a patriarchal framework. Jezebel's influence over Ahab and the court highlights the capabilities of women in ancient societies, even as it raises questions about the sources and limitations of their power. Religious syncretism. Jezebel's efforts to integrate Baal worship into Israelite religion exemplify religious syncretism, where elements of different religious beliefs and practices are blended. This syncretism is theologically significant as it represents a challenge to the exclusivity of Yahwism and the potential for cultural and religious assimilation. The covenant theology. The theological framework of covenant is central to understanding Jezebel's story. Her actions represent a violation of the covenant between Yahweh and Israel, where the people are called to exclusive devotion to Yahweh. This breach of covenant results in spiritual adultery, with Jezebel playing the role of a femme fatale who leads Israel into idolatry. A Christological typology. Some theological interpretations see Jezebel as a type of Antichrist, a forerunner of those who would oppose the true worship of God. Her story can be read as a prefiguration of the ongoing struggle between the forces of light and darkness, truth and falsehood, in the cosmic battle between good and evil. The pneumatological implications. The spiritual conflict in Jezebel's story has pneumatological dimensions, involving the struggle between the spirit of Yahweh and the spirits of idolatry. Elijah, filled with the spirit of Yahweh, confronts the spiritual forces aligned with Baal, highlighting the theological importance of the Holy Spirit in maintaining religious purity and orthodoxy. In conclusion, the story of Jezebel is a multifaceted theological narrative that explores themes of idolatry, prophetic opposition, divine judgment, and the complexities of power and gender. Through academic analysis, Her story reveals profound insights into the nature of faith, covenant, and the ongoing struggle between true worship and religious syncretism. The statement that the story of Jezebel is a multifaceted theological narrative means that her narrative is rich and complex, offering multiple layers of meaning and interpretation from a theological perspective. This complexity allows for a deep and nuanced understanding of various theological concepts. Let's break down the specific themes and insights mentioned. A multifaceted theological narrative. Idolatry. Jezebel's story is a prime example of idolatry, where the worship of false gods is prioritized over the true God, Yahweh. Idolatry in this context is not just about the worship of physical idols but also about the devotion to ideas, practices, or powers that usurp the place of God. Jezebel's promotion of Baal and Asherah worship represents a spiritual adultery, where Israel's allegiance is divided or transferred to foreign deities. This theme explores the consequences of such spiritual infidelity and the dilution of religious purity. The prophetic opposition. The conflict between Jezebel and Elijah highlights the role of prophets as divine mouthpieces and guardians of theological orthodoxy. Elijah's uncompromising stance against Baal worship embodies the concept of prophetic opposition, where true prophets challenge and confront religious syncretism and apostasy. This dynamic underscores the importance of prophetic voices in maintaining religious integrity and in calling people back to the true worship of God. Her divine judgment. Jezebel's eventual downfall serves as a powerful illustration of divine judgment. Her gruesome death, as foretold by Elijah, is a manifestation of God's retribution against those who lead His people astray. This theme explores the theological concept of lex talionis, where the punishment fits the crime, and highlights the idea that divine justice will ultimately prevail against idolatry and apostasy. The complexities of power and gender. Jezebel's story also delves into the complexities of power and gender within a patriarchal society. As a foreign queen, Jezebel wields significant influence over her husband and the court, challenging the traditional power dynamics. From a feminist theological perspective, her story can be seen as an exploration of ecclesia feminina, where the capabilities and limitations of female power are examined. Jezebel's agency and the sources of her power raise questions about the role of women in religious and political leadership. A few profound insights. The nature of her faith. Through Jezebel's story, we gain insights into the nature of faith and its fragility. The narrative shows how easily faith can be compromised and how crucial it is to remain steadfast in devotion to God. Faith is portrayed as a dynamic and ongoing commitment, rather than a static belief, and it is tested and refined through trials and temptations. The covenant theology. The concept of covenant is central to understanding Jezebel's story. Her actions represent a breach of the covenant between Yahweh and Israel, where the people are called to exclusive devotion. This covenant theology emphasizes the relational aspect of faith, where God's people are in a binding agreement with Him, and violations of this agreement have serious consequences. The struggle between true worship and religious syncretism. Syncretism, derived from the Greek synkresis, meaning comparison or fusion, refers to the process by which disparate religious beliefs, practices, and symbols are amalgamated and reconciled within a new, cohesive framework. This phenomenon is often observed in the context of cultural exchange, colonialism, and religious evolution, where diverse theological traditions intersect and integrate. Syncretism can manifest at various levels, including doctrinal, ritualistic, and mythological, leading to the creation of hybrid religious systems that incorporate elements from multiple sources. Scholars often distinguish between explicit and implicit syncretism. Explicit syncretism involves a deliberate and conscious effort to combine different religious traditions, often driven by a desire for religious pluralism or a need to accommodate diverse beliefs within a single community. In contrast, implicit syncretism occurs more organically, as a result of gradual cultural exchange and the natural evolution of religious practices over time. Syncretism can also be analyzed through the lens of acculturation, where a dominant culture absorbs and assimilates elements of a subordinate culture, leading to a blended religious identity. This process can be observed in various historical contexts, such as the spread of Christianity and its incorporation of local pagan practices, or the fusion of African spiritual traditions with Catholicism in the diaspora. Furthermore, syncretism can be understood as a form of religious bricolage, where individuals or communities piecemeal together religious elements from various sources to create a personalized and meaningful spiritual path. This concept, borrowed from Claude Lévi-Strauss' analysis of myth, highlights the creative and adaptive nature of religious syncretism. In summary, syncretism is a complex and multifaceted process that involves the fusion of diverse religious beliefs and practices, driven by cultural exchange, acculturation, and the human tendency to seek meaning and coherence in spiritual matters. Jezebel's story highlights the ongoing struggle between true worship and religious syncretism. The integration of foreign religious practices into Israelite religion poses a threat to the purity of Yahwism. Sidebar. Yahwism, also known as Yahwistic religion or Yahwism, refers to the ancient Israelite monotheistic religion centered around the worship of Yahweh, the national God of Israel. This theological framework emerged during the Iron Age and evolved into a complex and influential religious system that laid the groundwork for later Jewish and Christian traditions. To understand Yahwism within a highly academic theological context, it is essential to examine its historical development, doctrinal tenets, ritual practices, and its relationship with other ancient Near Eastern religions. The historical development. The origins of Yahwism can be traced back to the early Israelite tribes who settled in Canaan during the Late Bronze Age and Early Iron Age. Initially, Yahweh was likely one among several deities worshipped by the Israelites, reflecting a henotheistic or polytheistic religious landscape. Over time, Yahweh came to be seen as the sole deity worthy of worship, marking a shift towards monotheism. This process was influenced by various historical factors, including political centralization, prophetic movements, and the Israelites' experiences of exile and return. The doctrinal tenets. At the core of Yahwism is the belief in the singularity and exclusivity of Yahweh as the creator and ruler of the universe. This monotheistic doctrine is encapsulated in the Shema, a foundational prayer that affirms, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one," Deuteronomy 6:4. Yahweh is characterized by several attributes, including omnipotence, omniscience, and absolute moral authority. He is portrayed as a God of justice, mercy, and covenant fidelity, deeply involved in the affairs of his chosen people, Israel. Yahwism also emphasizes the concept of the covenant, a sacred agreement between Yahweh and the Israelites, mediated through figures such as Abraham, Moses, and David. This covenant entails mutual obligations, Yahweh's promise of protection and blessing in exchange for the Israelites' obedience to his laws and commandments. The Torah, or the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible, serves as the foundational text outlining these laws and the narrative of the covenant relationship. The ritual practices. The ritual life of Yahwism is centered around the temple in Jerusalem, which serves as the dwelling place of Yahweh's presence on earth. Sacrificial rituals, prescribed in detail in the Torah, play a crucial role in maintaining the covenant relationship. These rituals include burnt offerings, grain offerings, and sin offerings, each with specific symbolic meanings and purposes. Other important rituals include circumcision, which marks entry into the covenant community, and various festivals such as Passover, Tabernacles, and the Day of Atonement, which commemorate significant events in Israel's history and reinforce the covenant bond. The relationship with ancient Near Eastern religions. Yahwism emerged within a religious milieu characterized by polytheism and the worship of various deities associated with natural phenomena, ancestral spirits, and local cults. Yahweh was initially one among many gods, often interacting with or competing against other deities in the Israelite pantheon. Over time, Yahwism distinguished itself through its emphasis on ethical monotheism, rejecting the worship of idols and asserting the unique sovereignty of Yahweh. This process involved both the absorption and rejection of elements from surrounding religions, resulting in a unique theological synthesis. A prophetic tradition. A distinctive feature of Yahwism is its prophetic tradition, which played a pivotal role in shaping its doctrinal and ethical framework. Prophets such as Moses, Elijah, Isaiah, and Jeremiah acted as intermediaries between Yahweh and the Israelites, delivering divine messages, condemning idolatry and injustice, and calling for repentance and covenant renewal. The prophetic books of the Hebrew Bible reflect a deep concern for social justice, ethical behavior, and faithfulness to Yahweh's commandments. Yahwism represents a significant theological development in the history of religions, marked by its transition from henotheism to monotheism, its emphasis on covenant theology, and its unique ritual and prophetic traditions. Within the ancient Near Eastern context, Yahwism offered a distinctive vision of divine sovereignty, ethical monotheism, and covenant fidelity, laying the foundation for later Jewish and Christian theological constructs. This theme explores the tension between cultural assimilation and religious orthodoxy, and the need to maintain the distinctiveness of true worship amidst diverse religious influences. The academic analysis. Historical critical method. An academic analysis of Jezebel's story might employ the historical critical method, examining the text within its historical, cultural, and literary contexts. This approach would involve studying the political and religious dynamics of ancient Israel and Phoenicia, as well as the literary techniques used in the books of Kings. A literary analysis. Literary analysis would focus on the narrative structure, character development, and thematic motifs in Jezebel's story. This approach would explore how the text uses symbolism, imagery, and plot devices to convey theological messages and create a compelling narrative. Theological interpretation. Theological interpretation would delve into the deeper spiritual meanings and implications of Jezebel's story. This approach would involve examining the text through the lens of various theological doctrines, such as covenant theology, pneumatology, and eschatology, to gain a richer understanding of its spiritual significance. In conclusion, the story of Jezebel is a theological treasure trove that offers profound insights into the nature of faith, the complexities of power and gender, and the ongoing struggle between true worship and religious syncretism. Through academic analysis, her narrative reveals the multifaceted dimensions of theological truth and the enduring relevance of biblical stories in understanding spiritual dynamics. This was the story of Jezebel, the Evil Queen. A Bible study by Ron Smith.